Hello, hello.
Hi, Matthew. How are you?
I'm good, Steve. How are you doing?
I'm very good. It looks like you're in a corridor or something.
Oh yeah, so I'm in my den record collection room.
Real
Yeah.
vinyl?
Yes, sir. Real vinyl. We had a bunch of built-ins put in over here to store everything because I wanted to have it all easily accessible. But Vancouver's also known to have very small living quarters, so we had to. It's my office vinyl area, workspace, all of that combined.
So I found out we have something in common, but almost the opposite, that we have been kind of transatlantic a little bit because
Okay.
I'm in Montreal now, but I'm originally from the UK. And
Okay.
I know you lived in sunny London for a while.
Uh, I did. Well, let me tell you, compared to Vancouver, it's very sunny.
How was your time in London, and why did you move there?
It was great. I loved it. Well, I'll say this: the city was great. It's so rich culturally and architecturally, and like coming from Vancouver, which on a global scale is a relatively newer city. It was just unbelievable. I had to keep reminding myself to look up because there's just so much beauty all around the city. But I went there for uni, as they call it over
Yeah.
there, and did 1 year there of a 4-year program. I was supposed to finish it, but when I came back home for summer, after my first year, I signed a record deal in Canada, and I was like, well, I'm going to stay here. But it was strange because I wasn't expecting to part ways with it when I came home. I was just expecting to come home for a few months and then head back and kind of pick up my life in the UK again. So I feel like there's definitely some unfinished business. And then shortly after that, of course, like the pandemic happens, and I'm like, well, I can't get back there in the way that I wanted to. For my last project, I was supposed to like shoot artwork there, and there was a lot of experiences tied in with my time in London, like into that project. So I'd say like my time in London is to be continued.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, put a pin in it, as they say.
exactly.
Yeah, we'll take a rain check would probably be more appropriate.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So, were you working on music while you were over there? I think because I believe you studied classical and you had operatic vocal training, right?
Yeah, so I trained in like classical voice and in opera when I was in Canada growing up from like 7 years old until, oh God, like 14, 15. And that's where I got my base in music. And then there was this weird juxtaposition though, because I'd go to, voice lessons and I'd be singing in Italian and German and all these different languages and just very much reading what was on the page. And then in the car ride home, I'd be listening to like Celine Dion and Shania Twain and like singing along to all of these like big pop divas in my spare time. So my passion was definitely lied in contemporary music, but I was getting all my base, training in classical music. And then
Mm.
as I got older, I kind of realized that I was like, well, if I want to do like contemporary music, like I can just like start writing music. I'm like, I got to be able to crack the code somehow. So I started writing my own music and or slowly like dabbling in it. And then when I was looking at going to, post-secondary school as, high school graduation was kind of approaching, I was trying to figure out how I could check off a bunch of boxes with one task, which was going to post-secondary school. I really wanted to travel. I really wanted to pursue music. And my parents had the expectation that I went to post-secondary school because I did okay in school. And so I was like, I think that I have a plan here. And so I applied to a bunch of international music schools and got into a few, and then figured that if I was going to take this big leap of faith, then I may as well, go as far away into, as completely different of a culture as I had been exposed to, and found myself in London studying contemporary music.
So you grew up with the classical side and then
Yes.
studied the contemporary side. Do you feel any of the classical training comes into the music that you make now?
100%. I think that it ultimately like formed the signature vocal sound that I have, and regardless of whether I'm singing contemporary music or classical music, my training informs every time that I sing any line and how I sing it. And I'm known to, whenever people find out that I'm trained, a lot of people say, "Oh, I guess that," and I think it's because I have a thick, really thick vibrato, and I think that people associate that to trained singing, to classical singing, to musical theater singing. And so in a similar way to like, I think people associate that style of singing to Lady Gaga, because she also had a bit of a classical training background also. I think that a bit of that falls into the same category as to when I sing different things. But even when it comes down to if I'm feeling sick or if I have a cold or if we're doing a tour across the country and we're playing shows back to back, I lean onto my training to make sure that I'm singing healthy, that I know how to, properly warm up, how to properly make sure that I'm going to be able to sing back to back to back to back. So as of right now, that's paying off. But as I knock on wood.
Do you remember the first song you ever wrote?
Oh my gosh, it was probably like, I think it was probably 7 or 8 in my room. And I think that when I started writing music, it was very much listen to my favorite song over and over and over again, and then just like change a few of the words. And I think like as I started dabbling in that, I got a bit more adventurous in how far I would stray from the actual song that I was just listening to. And eventually that led into writing whatever I wanted to write. I had a big issue though, because I didn't play an instrument classically growing up. Like I wasn't trained in anything, but I always had a keyboard. And so I would watch YouTube videos of piano covers, of like piano tutorials for like my favorite pop songs. And then I got little colored circle stickers. And whatever the first chord was, I would put a little pink sticker on all those notes on the keyboard. Whatever the second chord was, I would put a little green sticker on the keyboard. And then I was like, okay, we got to play pink, and then we got to play green, and then we got to play orange. And then I was like, this doesn't necessarily sound like that song without all of the, production and all the bells and whistles. And from there, I started being adventurous and kind of writing my own melodies. And then I kind of created a monster at that point who just sat in his room and just started writing random songs to, I guess, the common 4-chord structure that like a lot of pop music is based on. But that's definitely how I got my start.
So when you were that age, you're talking about 7 or 8, what artists were you actually listening to and copying their songs?
Okay, so up until 7 and 8, like I guess, from a very stereotypical Canadian house, or we were a very patriotic house. I don't know what it was, but my childhood was almost exclusively Shania Twain and Celine Dion. Like it was just that on repeat at all times. And there's probably a bit of my parents started me with that. And then I was a kid who very much knew what I liked. And so any car ride, anytime there was a CD player, that's what I asked for. If I didn't get it, there was probably a little bit of a fit. So maybe that's why it was so consistent up until that point. But at that point, it kind of branched out to like pop divas, ultimately, like Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera. I was big on Faith Hill, which I think probably carried over from the Shania Twain pop country aspect. But it was a lot of like female singers. I was always very drawn to female singers. I thought because they had a higher range that meant that they had like significantly more vocal skill. And I was also a boy soprano at the time, so that was the music that I could sing along to. I didn't really find that I could sing along to a lot of the male singers, and so I definitely was glued to like pop divas. But I think that just listening to like Shania Twain and Celine Dion for a lot of my formative years, it built a lot of my musical taste because those melodies on those hits, it's just like it's second to none. And especially the way that Celine Dion sings, I think it's very emotive, and I could hear her sing The Phone Book, and I know exactly what she meant and exactly how she felt, regardless of what all the words were, because of how she sang it. So I think that I picked up a lot of that from listening to those artists in my early years.
So fast forward a few years, and you released your first single in 2016, I think, right?
Yes.
So
yeah, I mean, yeah, it sounds right. I'm going to go with yeah.
I know more than you.
Thank you. Yeah, exactly.
How did it feel at that point to have gone from, copying Celine and Shania at home as a kid to releasing your own song into the world? Was it exciting, nerve-wracking? How did you feel at that point?
I think it was like there's a bit of imposter syndrome almost, because it's like I'm very much on the receiving end of music my entire life. So to be in the seat where it's like I'm putting it out and I see myself on these platforms, at that time it was like seeing myself on iTunes in this on the we're all playing on we're all living on this same playing field at that point. It felt strange because I'm like, okay, I'm still very much a receiver of music, but hey, my music is on this platform too. That's so cool. And I was very lucky to have my first single with my label do well, and it found itself top 20 in Canada on, Billboard charts. And I was seeing myself next to names like, Taylor Swift and Dua Lipa. I mean, I have it up here, like right under Demi Lovato. And I was like, oh my gosh, these are people that I listen to every single day. So to see my name on, right next to all these people was super surreal and super cool. And I think it was empowering for me to be able to really choose whatever I wanted to make. It's like, do I want to make something that sounds like this? Do I want to make something that sounds like this? Like, I get to choose and cater my introduction into the world with whatever I wanted to say. And I think that going to the UK provided me a whole new world of and subgenres of music that I just wasn't exposed to growing up in Canada. And I think that Britpop definitely informed my personal music style and my the type of music that I make. I remember part of the reason that I went to the UK over other schools in the United States was because I had just discovered Paloma Faith, and Paloma Faith was not an artist that I had any experience with in Canada. She was very big in the UK. Maybe it didn't cross over in the same way to North America, or at least at that time. Mm. But I remember she was the Vivo Lift artist, and I saw an ad for it, and I was just so enthralled with like the colors and the architecture that was paired with the music. And then I finally got to listen to the music, and there was so much soul, so much texture in her voice. And it was just, I remember this aha moment of, whoa, this is an option. You can make music like this if you want to. And then going to the UK and surrounding myself with all of this new music that felt like it was so buttery and had so much texture and so much depth. It was just, I was a kid in a candy store, and I think that I took a lot of that in and put a lot of that into the music that I made for myself. And and it's definitely, stuck around to this day. And I'm so grateful that I had that opportunity and that experience.
Is there a record or an act that reminds you of your time in the UK?
I would listen to Fall to Grace by Paloma Faith. I thought that it was the most stunning artwork that I had ever seen. She's in this big like red dress, and there's parrots flying around, and it was so camp, and it was so over the top. And I was just so enthralled by it. And I think that like that album to me matched what I felt like the architecture around me sounded like, and like, what the weather sounded like, and what the accents felt like. Her accent is so, it's in my opinion, like quintessentially British. And I feel like that was the experience that I was having. And it was super cool. And I played that album over and over again. And it was the first time that I felt that there was an album that was truly like a body of work. It wasn't just a bunch of singles put together. There was a story thought out from the first song to the last song. And there were some songs that weren't meant to be singles, and that was okay. Because I was used to listening to like Come On Over by Shania Twain, which it's like, you get no breaks. It's hit after hit after hit after hit. And it's like every song has a purpose, and they could have sent any of those songs to radio as the first single and they all would have worked. And then to have Fall to Grace, where it's like there's these intimate moments. There's songs that wouldn't work at radio. There's everything takes you on a bit of a different journey, but it felt like this catered experience to be kind of walked through. And I'd walk around the outer circle of Regent's Park every single day, listening to that record, being like, I can do this. Like this could be what I do for myself. So it was super transformative being able to have that record with me at that time.
Okay, so talking about the outer circle.
Yeah, there you go.
Is that where the name came from?
It did. I think that like if there's any tangible experience in my life that's like ingrained in me to like trigger an emotional response, it's thinking about the outer circle of Regent's Park, because I genuinely would walk that circle every single day. I didn't know, when I moved to London, I knew zero people. I was like newly 18. I had just graduated from living with my parents to living in the center of like one of the biggest, craziest, most chaotic cities in the world. And it was super overwhelming for me. Like I learned a lot, but I was not ready at the time. And it was an emotional roller coaster. And now whenever I hear that record, like any song from that record, like I'm immediately back walking the outer circle. Like the music takes me back to those emotions, and like it's like a bit of a time capsule that as soon as I hear songs from that I listened to at that time, it opens that time capsule. The emotions like rush back in. And I think that there were so many experiences that I had there and so much time that I had there in London that like I was just kind of surviving through. I was like, just survive, make sure you get groceries today, like make sure that all the bills are paid and just like stay afloat. And, at the 3 hours that I'm awake and my parents back home are awake, make sure that I call them and just get through the day. And, but in turn, when I came back and like my career kind of took off instantly and things kind of started, I was sitting in the pandemic when things finally shut down and I was about to write this project. And I was like, wow, I have so many experiences that I didn't process or deal with that have just been like put on pause from when I went there because things have just been moving so fast. So, and then the pandemic hit and I had no new experience to touch on. And I was like, well, why don't I go and dive into some of these feelings that I had, these really tangible feelings that I still have to this day from when I was walking the outer circle all those days. And that's how the EP came to be and the project came to be. And I think that I opened up a can of worms for myself that I've been sifting through ever since, but probably to my benefit long term for sure.
Well, definitely to your benefit. We now have a Juno Award nomination.
Yes.
When did you find out about that, and how do you actually find out about that?
Okay, so I knew that we were going to submit this year for the Junos. I'm someone in the industry that like I don't celebrate anything until it's happened, and then 2 weeks have passed. I never count on anything. I'm just like very pessimistic, and I think that I protect myself that way, and I just focus on the work and I move forward. But I know that we were submitting this year, and when we submitted, I just put a little note in my calendar on the day that they were announcing the nominations. And I was like, okay, like and then I was heading to New York the day that they were announcing it. And I forgot that the nominations were being announced. And I checked my calendar that morning and I was like, oh, Juno nominations are happening today. And the live stream was starting as I was sat down on the plane in my chair. And the person beside me is chatting my ear up as I'm trying to, talking about where they're going or where I'm going. And normally I'd be very much interested in listening to what this person had to say. And I'm watching it on my phone. We're about to take off. And I think my category was announced like right before I had to turn my airplane mode signal on. But the category came up and my phone started glitching. And then suddenly I just saw my face pop up and I was like, oh my gosh. My partner was with me. I was sobbing. And then of course I get this great news. Then I have to put my phone on airplane mode, not celebrate with my loved ones, with the rest of the world, not tell anyone. And then take a 5-hour plane ride with my cell service off. It was good. I got to like process it and like really feel it and not just be trapped in my phone, messaging here, there, and everywhere. But it was a really cool moment, and I think I got a bit more emotional than I thought that I would have. It's just something that I had I have a little manifestation list on my phone, and it was something that I wanted to happen at some point in my career, which I'm hoping is going to be over the next 20 years. So the fact that I was able to kind of check that box off now and be nominated with a bunch of other artists that I consider friends and people that I really look up to and admire it's been a really cool experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So when you started out, was there somebody that you thought, I would love to have a career like that person?
I think that, well, when I started out, I was, 17 and going to school. And I think that my narcissistic mindset at that time was like, if I'm not an international superstar household name, like I'm not going to be happy. Like it has to be that. And I think that as I've grown up and I've actually worked on the craft a bit more, and I think that the real magic for me lives in just being able to make whatever I want to make. And as long as the bills are paid and there's a roof over my head and I'm living comfortably doing that, and I'm not stressed at the end of the month when anything comes forward, I think that that's ultimately the dream for me, because I've realized in my career very quickly that like when I set goals and then I achieve those goals, there's maybe 10 seconds of celebrating it, 10 seconds of living in that and being able to be like, wow, that was really cool. And then 10 seconds later, there's a voice in the back of my head that says, okay, what's next? It's like, and it's like, now we either have to maintain this, you have something to lose, and now you got to climb to the next ladder. And I realized really quick that I think that that's a bit of human instinct, and that'll never stop until every single person in the world likes me. There's always going to be something else that I can, get, or something else that I can achieve on a superficial level. So I think at the end of the day, what I'm trying to remind myself every day is, as long as there's a roof over my head, as long as the bills are paid and I get to truly feel like I'm not sacrificing my artistic integrity and I get to make what I want to make, that's where the magic is. And I'll absolutely set goals and want to achieve them. I think I just keep them more in a realistic scope, that if I achieve that goal, I bet money that, 10 minutes later, there's going to be a new goal that falls into that space.
I think
So
I think that's something that happens with artists of all kinds, not just musical artists.
absolutely.
Is never being satisfied, and sometimes that can lead to mental health problems because they're never getting that satisfaction. But at the same time, that's what keeps the passion inside them and moving forward. And I think if you ever get to a point where you're like, I'm as good as I can be now, that's when things go downhill fast.
100%. And I mean, I remember looking at like the biggest artists in the world, and I saw so many of them like struggling, with mental health and all these different things. And what society has taught us is that like we should want money, we should want fame, we should want power, and we should want validation. So I'm like, these people have all those things and they're not happy. And I really saw from what my like early experiences in the music industry, I was like, well, when I achieve a goal, I immediately want more and more and more and more and more. And so I would imagine that when you get to the top of the mountain and it feels like there isn't more to be had, struggling to find purpose in that at that moment, when you're technically, what society has told us, it's like you've achieved all of that and you still don't feel fulfilled. I was like, okay, well, I need to fall in love with the craft again, make sure that it doesn't feel like a job, make sure that I'm really choosing, that I'm doing what I love to do every day. And as long as I'm just bettering myself, and if my goal is to be better than I was yesterday, then those are the tangible goals that I think will keep me fulfilled. And so to be determined if that's the actual case, but that's what I'm sticking to as of right now.
Yeah. So this person you were sat next to on the plane, who wanted to talk to you, if you told them that you were making music, how would you describe to that person the music that you make? Because that's going to be their first question.
Oh, interesting. That's a really good question. Okay, so I always say that my music is vocally centered. It's vocally focused. I think that like how I sing the music that I write is the most important part. For me, as a consumer of music, that's what I would sell myself. Is, whenever I listen to music, I want to hear how the person sings it. I want to hear their emotion through the runs that they choose and through when they project and when they growl and like why they're doing it in that moment, because that's what really got me hooked on singing in the first place. And that's what got me hooked on writing, is I write music informed by how I'm going to sing it. Rather than starting with poetry first, I'll hum gibberish around the house. And when I feel like I have a like melodic line that really hits me in the gut, then I say, what words match how I'm singing this line? What words are going to convey that message? And what vowels are going to be easiest to sing? So I'll definitely say vocally focused. I'd say, honest and like vulnerable storytelling. I think that I've gotten a lot better with being comfortable about like sharing actual personal experiences that I've had, and using writing as a bit of like a therapeutic tool for me to process externally. I'm someone who, when I talk and I hear things, I get a bit more context on them rather than just living with them in my head. And I definitely say that I always describe my style of music as UK pop. I think that there's a bit more soul in UK pop as opposed to like what we consider US pop, which I'd associate to be a bit more like bubblegum. Okay. I think that I was raised listening to pop music. My instincts with writing are very much pop, but I think that there's a bit more soul, there's a bit more texture, there's a bit more depth there, which I don't know, maybe I'm just kind of being kind to myself and slapping on the attributes that I love about the UK as someone who's been there for a year. But I do think that I was very much inspired by that. And I do think that I pull a lot of that into my music.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear from somebody who's had experience of living in the UK, but is not from there, that you find that with the music over there. And as a queer artist, how do you feel about the term queer pop? It seems like having the word queer in a genre. How do you feel about that?
There are certain experiences as queer people that we can just relate to each other on. And if I'm writing about my honest experience, every aspect of my life is influenced and is inspired by my experience as a queer person. Whether it's how I walk, whether it's how I talk, whether it's how I've, trained myself, or I'm detraining myself to compensate from if I walk too feminine, or if I walk too this, or if we're all going to encounter someone in our day who has a problem with who we are, like it influences every aspect but what I do every day. So in turn, the experiences that I'm singing about, that I write about, are going to be relatable to other queer people. And so I think that queer pop is something that I embrace, that I welcome, that I cheer on, that I champion, because it allows other queer people to feel like they are heard, like their experience is valid. I do think that on the other end of that, though, that we are almost, it's seen rather than like this common experience, which it should be, but rather than that, it's seen as like an actual genre of music. And
Yeah.
every year on Pride Month, queer artists get put on this queer playlist that has songs of every different genre, and then a bunch of queer people go and listen to music that we were probably already listening to from queer artists that share this similar experiences to us. But in turn, it's almost like we kind of get pushed into this corner every Pride Month where it's like, okay, and the queer people are going to go listen to music from queer artists, but it almost robs us from the inclusion in the general playlist and compilations of our actual genres of music.
Yeah.
Not from just being, a queer artist that makes queer music. There are queer artists that make punk music, that make pop music, that make rock music, that make hip hop music. And in turn, I find that sometimes corporations, companies, the music industry pins queer music as, okay, that's for queer people. It's not for cisgendered straight people. But in turn, I think as a queer person, I very much was able to relate to the cisgendered straight love songs that Celine Dion sang to me every single time, even though that wasn't my experience.
Yeah.
There are universal feelings of love, anger, heartbreak that I think, as much as queer people have been forced to connect with straight cisgendered love, anger, heartbreak, I think that straight cisgendered people are more than capable of hearing a queer take on that and being able to relate to those emotions in the same way. So I could rant on this for hours, but I think that there's a benefit to it in terms of queer people being able to find and identify with their own experience. And I think that there's a little bit of a hindrance when it becomes just like a token place where we get cornered into queer music as an actual genre of music.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I think we could also be included in just the general channels and avenues for music of our own designated genre.
Okay, that was a great answer.
Thank you very much. I've thought about it. If you can't tell.
Yeah. What album do you think you've listened to the most in your lifetime?
Album I've listened to the most in my lifetime.
Paloma.
Okay, so there's a few. I'd unfortunately have to say my own records, because when I'm going through the mix stage, the amount of times that I have to A and B them on different speakers is absolutely wacky. So I think that unfortunately I've listened to my own music quite a lot, to the point that I'm kind of numb to it now. Like it doesn't register as actual music. But I think in terms of like for actual choosing for personal enjoyment, Celine Dion's Greatest Hits, which is a decade of song, that was like huge for me. Shania Twain, Come On Over. If someone asked me what I think the best record of all time was, or if I had to send an album into outer space to show, life forms on other planets what music on Earth sounded like, Come On Over by Shania Twain is the one that I'm sending in the time capsule out to space.
And it's even got an inviting title for the alien.
Exactly. Well, I mean, I guess it depends on which hands it lands into.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna definitely welcome the invitation. And honestly, if people don't like Shania Twain, then don't come on over. I mean, honestly, stay out there. But and then I think Paloma Faith Fall to Grace. If I actually had to like lay it down the amount of times that I listened to that walking around the outer circle consistently, I would say that that's probably going to ring in the top 3 as well, for sure.
Okay. And as a songwriter yourself, when's the last time you heard a song and you were like, oh my God, I wish I'd had that idea?
Okay, so this is funny, because this is the question that I ask whenever if I'm writing for other artists, or I'm in a co-writing session for other artists. That's the question that I ask, because that's the easiest way to communicate to me what they want. I'm like, what's the song you were like, oh, I wish that was mine? I'm like, okay, well, let's see what's happening there. Let me try to give you that. Let me try to give you that feeling. And I was on a walk the other day, and my music was on shuffle, and a song called Stay Away by Muna came on, and I think that it's a trio group. I think that they're from the UK or maybe
I think they're US.
US. Oh well, never mind. I'm completely wrong.
I might be wrong.
And it's called "Stay Away," and it came on, and the chorus hit, and the hook line of the chorus is, "No one ever told me that leaving was the easy part. Now I have to stay away." Or and then it's leaving you is easy. Now I have to do what's hard. I have to stay away. And I was like, wow, that's so clever. I wish that was mine. And then I was like, can I take that concept and repurpose it? And I'm like, no, there's no way to do it as good as that. There's no way to. And I was like, well, they got me. They found it. But I was like, that's the feeling that I want to give people, or especially like there's no, in my opinion, greater nod from other musicians than hearing a song and stopping and making it makes you stop in your tracks and be like, wow, I wish that I had that idea. So yeah, hopefully I've maybe given that to some person at one point in their lifetime. That would be a huge honor. But I think that "Stay Away" by Muna definitely stopped me in my tracks last week for sure.
Nice. So you've been releasing music for just over 5 years, I guess.
Yeah.
But you've actually released a lot of music in that time. You know, new artists don't release that much in the first 5 years. Is there one song, like obviously you've had your hits, but if we ignore the hits, is there one song that you think people should listen to? One song that you're really proud of that maybe not so many people have heard?
Awesome. Thank you for asking that question. I think for me, there was a song on the Outer Circle called "Healing" that is, I think it's my favorite song that I've ever written. If my catalog was burning to the ground and I could save one, I think that's the one that I would take with me. And hope my catalog doesn't burn to the ground. But you know, if someone asked me that question, that's definitely what I would take. And it's a song that I've had the melody written. As I said, I write melodies first. I had the melody written for I think 3 or 4 years at this point, and it always had a really special place in my heart. How it made me feel, and I could never find the right words that I felt matched how it made me feel. And typically I write really fast and it all comes together. And this one really took years and a bunch of different versions and a bunch of different titles and concepts. And when the pandemic hit and I finally was able to dive into these past feelings and thoughts and emotions and the concept of healing, and maybe I was healing and maybe that's why I feel the way that I feel right now. Maybe it's just a part of the journey. Maybe it's going to be bad. Maybe it's going to be gross, but maybe, you know, wounds kind of itch as they heal, you know, like maybe this is just part of my process. When that landed, I was like, finally, like, this is how that melody made me feel when I sing it. And I finally had words for that. And I think that it's a song that could potentially help people who needed it if it found them at that time. And I think that's a song that's super special to me. And I would definitely pick "Healing." So thank you for asking that question. That's a really thoughtful question. Nice.
So what's next for you? We have the EP, and then what's going to be for the rest of the year?
Oh, amazing. So we have a bunch of stuff happening right now. We have some, I'm known for some of my stripped down pop covers. I'll let you know first, but I've done a Mariah Carey cover and a Britney Spears cover. I completely changed up like the way that those songs were interpreted. And those songs had done really well for me. And we're doing another one, and I'm doing a Shania Twain cover where I'm changing it up and kind of putting it on its head. So we have that coming out. And then we have some new singles for the summertime. And Justin talks with my team about what next year is looking like. But I think we have a really cool endeavor where I'm going to take on some catalogs of music that I think people wouldn't really hear me taking on. So we have a lot of exciting stuff. We have some touring coming up for the end of this year. So we'll hopefully be able to go out and see a bunch of people again, which would be so nice. But yeah, there's lots happening. And I want to thank you so much for your time, Steve. This has been an absolute pleasure to chat with you, and your questions have been so thoughtful and awesome. So thank you so much for doing what you do.
Thank you very much. You know, it's been a real pleasure talking to you. It's been really interesting, and I'm excited to see what you do next. And good luck with the Juno nomination. Do you automatically get to go to the award show?
Yes, I will be going to the awards. It'll be a good time. I've been to the Junos before as someone who like paid to get a ticket to go and watch in the audience when they were in Vancouver. So being able to go as someone who's participating and who is nominated is going to be a really cool experience. And I'm going to try to remind myself to put my phone away and just take it all in.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, enjoy that night. Anyway, I'm sure that'll be a lot of fun. So
Thank you so much.
thanks a lot, and good luck with everything, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks so much, Steve. Have a wonderful rest of your day.